What's up guys, this is CSO and I'm here to talk to you guys about doing Dolby Atmos in a limited space where you sit by the back wall. I have already made a video on this topic, but in this one I will go into more detail, explain everything better and address the concerns to those who say that this is completely wrong. Before we begin, I want to talk about what Atmos setup I recommend and a couple of options how you can set those speakers up, including a standard method and another one that is unconventional, perhaps controversial, but in my opinion, a better one. Also, if you have a proper 0.4 or 0.6 Atmos configuration, then good for you. But this video is not meant for you. You won't learn anything from this video that could make your setup better. Now, if you sit by the back wall, or you're thinking about adding too much speakers to your setup without opening up your ceiling and running more cables behind the walls, then you should definitely pay close attention to what I have to say. So let's talk about what you can do when setting up an Atmos theater in a room with limited space. If you're watching this, you're probably sitting by the back wall or not far from it. In this case, a 0.2 Atmos setup is usually recommended, with speakers either mounted on the front wall around 3 to 5 feet above the main speakers, or in-ceiling speakers installed right above you. You could also waste your time by placing the Atmos speakers on top of your left and right front speakers, but I'm sure you have already heard that this isn't recommended. I have tried this myself the first time when I bought my Atmos speakers, and they didn't really work well. The pink noise test from the receiver sounded like it was coming straight from the speakers and not from above. For context, I have an 8-foot flat ceiling and I was sitting 10 feet away. Fun fact, my mom has clip front towers with built-in up-firing Atmos speakers, and to my biggest surprise, they actually work. Probably because those speakers are recessed into the tower, meaning I don't have a clear line of sight to the woofer and tweeter. Either way, they actually work. She also has an 8-foot flat ceiling, and they work the best when the listening position is fairly close to the screen, around 6 to 8 feet. At 10 to 11 feet, they still work, but not as good. Also, if you have 3 listening position, the middle one works the best. Sitting on either side will make the further opposite speaker not work at all, at least based on my testing. But enough about the bouncy style Atmos speakers, and let's get back to the front heights and top middle. If you only do front heights, it will open up the front soundstage, and while you will like it a lot, you will be missing out on hearing overhead sounds from right above you. Doing top middle only has its own pros and cons. In the beginning, the overhead sounds will be as cool as the first time you experienced surround sound coming out from behind you. But here is my issue with a 0.2 Atmos speaker setup using top middle. Whatever happens in front of you or behind you will always come out of the overhead speaker alone. There are some cool videos on YouTube by Object Demo where he shows what speakers play what sound when you have a 0.6, 0.4 or 0.2 Atmos setup. Watching these videos will clarify how you get the same sound from the top middle alone in a 0.2 Atmos configuration compared to what you would otherwise get from the top front and the top rear speakers. So in reality, you won't miss out on any sound in the Atmos mix, but it will be played through the top middle only. The next logical step, and probably the only one in a limited space like mine, will be running top middle and front heights together. Obviously, not much else you can do if you have no space behind you for rear surrounds and top rear or rear heights. So we have talked about recommended Atmos setup. Now let's talk about existing Atmos content in the movies. You might have not considered this, but not all Atmos sound mixes created the same way. There are movies where only the top middle speakers are active, or movies where only the top front and the top rear speakers are active. And unfortunately, there are some weird cases where they're utilizing top middle together with the top fronts. We're gonna get back to this in a little bit, but I want to tell you what I recommend configuring these speakers up as. I started out with front heights and really enjoyed them. It completely opened up the front soundstage, just like everyone says they do. Months later, I got my top middle in-ceiling speaker installed, and watching new movies or rewatching the same Atmos movies again felt like the top front speakers were not as active anymore, or I just can't hear them as much. I kind of figured that it is how sitting in the bubble felt like. Couldn't really localize the sounds coming from up there, but I'm sure if I disconnected those speakers, I would have had that something is missing feeling. But to be honest with you, what happened was, now that I have 0.4 Atmos set up, some have, or most of the sounds will now come out of the top middle speakers instead of coming out of the front heights when I only had those. Some movies might only utilize the top middle speaker, so nothing will play out of the front heights. Anyway, keep in mind, even if a movie had top rear Atmos content, it will still come out of the top middle speakers. Actually, a bunch of Disney Marvel movies only utilizing the top middle and top rear speakers, all blasting out of my top middle. After hours watching different movies and Dolby demos, I decided to experiment. I tried setting my current Atmos speakers as top front and top rear. I know this isn't Dolby spec. The Dolby guide doesn't even list having top middle and front heights alone as a valid setup. To be honest, it doesn't matter what they list in there, since they assume we all have the perfect room with plenty of space. They never specified anything for limited space room, but I'm sure they would actually tell you just go with whatever speaker configuration fits your space and follow the recommended angles for those speakers from the guide. Believe it or not, setting up these speakers as top front and top rear actually made most Atmos mixes sound even better. Now I have better overhead spread thanks to the incorrect configuration. But let me explain with some examples. If a movie had a proper 0.4 or 0.6 Atmos mix with the original configuration, whatever happens up front will come out of the front heights, or whatever happens above you or behind you will play out through the middle speaker. You do not have any way differentiating what's happening above or behind. With my way of setting up, whatever happens up front will still come out of the front heights, and whatever happens above now will play from all four speakers, and when something is happening behind you will play from the top middle speakers alone, thus giving me better separation of the Atmos sounds, and I can differentiate it if something is happening above or behind. You can argue all you want about this being wrong, but how is this being wrong or worse than having top middle speaker that plays all the sounds regardless of where the sound is originating from, front, above, behind? Ergo, I believe your argument is invalid. This brings us to the 0.2 Atmos content utilizing top middle. The problem is, when something is happening up front, you see what happens in front of you. It could be a little bit ahead, and that sound does not line up with the visual cues, and you hear the top middle speaker blasting sound from above. This sounds cool enough and better than not having Atmos speakers, but after a while it could start bothering you. It did bother me in some movie scenes. So what can you do? Well, you could do what I did and have all speakers play out the same sounds when something is happening above. This does shift the sound slightly forward. Keyword slightly. I guarantee it that does not sound bad or wrong one bit. Some might argue that this will sound like you are sitting outside the bubble. That is just simply foolish, not even remotely true. You know how I spoke about the front heights open up the front soundstage? I feel the same exact way about my 4 Atmos speakers, front heights and top middle, playing at the same time. I can't localize the sound as much anymore, and the whole ceiling soundstage opened up. It's simply better. Let's circle back to 0.4 Atmos content. Not all movies using top front and top rears. There are some weird mixes out there. As I said before, a bunch of Disney Marvel movies have mixes where the top middle and the top rear speakers play Atmos content. Again, when you have the top middle speakers only set up as top middle, that speaker will play all the Atmos sounds. With my called totally wrong settings, you can tell the difference between something is happening above you or behind you. When something is happening above, as I said before, you can hear all 4 speakers play, and when something is happening behind, only the top middle speaker will play above you. This is wrong. How so? So having top middle speakers play all the sounds being the correct one. Okay, where do we stand as of now? Oh yeah, 3-0 to my setup, in my opinion. Before I act like there are no flaws with my setup, I have to mention the only time I felt that my setting didn't improve much, but I can't really say that it made things worse, is when a movie has a mix with top front and top middle speakers. Playing this with my setup will actually have less separation. Either the front highs will play something or all 4s together. This is the only case where I found the original setup being slightly better, but to be honest, I haven't found much content like this. Actually, the only movie I found so far was Mad Max Fury Road. Again, it's far from bad. It still sounds really, really good, in my opinion. I don't think you're losing anything. To summarize everything, if you have no space behind you, I would definitely go with a 0.4 Atmos setup using front heights and top middle. Do not listen to those who will tell you otherwise and try to make you do only 0.2 Atmos setup. Put Atmos speakers on the front wall or bookshelves, angled at your listening position. Use the Dolby guide to set up your angles correctly, and I believe you can just take the distance between your wall and your listening position and multiply it by 0.8, and that should give you the recommended placement for the high Atmos speakers. So if you sit 10 feet away from the wall, you need to mount the front heights at 8 foot. If you sit 14 feet away, mount them at 11 feet. For the top middle, you want to make sure that you don't place it too close to the rear wall and the side ones. I'll recommend installing them at least 2 feet in away from the walls so the sound won't reflect off them as much. My top middle speakers are actually placed 2 feet in front of me, around 3 to 4 feet away from the back wall. Do the best you can and don't sweat it if you can't make it perfectly the same as in the Dolby guide. When it comes to what you should set them up as is up to you. Your mileage may also vary depending on what receiver you use. I have an Onkyo TX-NR7100 receiver, and I'm sure it's clear from this video why I find it better setting these speakers up as top front and top rear. Would you try it? Please let me know in the comments, and to be honest, I would find it hard to believe that you prefer having less spatial separation in the top speakers, but of course it's your setup and enjoy it how you want it. By the way, if you happen to have enough space but for some reason your 7.1.4 setup ended up with front heights and top middle speakers, I do not recommend setting those speakers up this way. Only works with 5.1 configuration. Before I wrap it up, I wanted to talk about some of my experience with different movies and demos. In the Dolby Atmos demo, there are some bug sounds moving above you, first on the right and then on the left. And I tried it with all speakers disconnected. First, I tried the 0.2 configuration using only the front heights, then after also with top middle alone. Both sounded the same, with sounds playing from the corresponding speakers, including the buck chirps. Next, I switched to 0.4 Atmos setup with front heights and top middle with the original correct configuration. This time I heard fewer sounds from the front heights and the buck chirping effect disappeared. Instead, I heard swooshes and ambient noises like tall grass and wind. The buck chirping and some other effects came out of the top middle speakers now. Then I configured them as front top and top rear. A setup considered completely wrong, right? Guess what? The buck chirps now panned with a Z-axis separation. The first chirp was clearly coming from the front right high speaker, and the second came from the left top middle speaker. This created a spatial effect far more immersive than using any 0.2 Atmos configuration. Dolby core sounded the same, no matter how I set them up. What I left disconnected, I couldn't really hear any difference setting them up like this or that. In Ready Player One, which is a top middle speaker heavy mix, some of the sounds felt rather wrong. Like in the big race scene, when the Bigfoot SUV drops the saw blades and drives over the Sixers cars, then right after that there is another Sixer car that topples over, and finally when the train crashes into the metal beams above, it all happens in front of you, yet all the sounds coming from above. Does it sound cool? It does. Does it sound 100% correct? Not really. Set the speakers up as top front and top rear, and the overhead sounds will shift forward a little since all four speakers will play it, and it will sound better. Anyway, thanks for watching, and see you guys in the next one.